You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 376, the Bad Batch breakdown for the episode Bounty Lost. And we are going to be talking about this latest episode that had, we left with a really big kind of cliffhanger at the very end of the last one. A lot of questions about how much was going to get resolved, and we got a lot of answers to that, and a lot of answers to other things that we were expecting to hear at some point during this season, and which I think is all good. I mean, we've got the information is starting to really kind of come in hot and heavy now, which is really good. And then they're taking a lot of the guessing work, while at the same time introducing more questions to ask. And to answer those questions is none other than Jonesy. Jonesy, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, we were talking before the show that you and I are pretty special today, that neither one of us is wearing a Star Wars shirt, which is a bit of an embarrassment and abomination, but we appreciate everyone sticking with us anyway.
What do you got? You've got a beer shirt on.
It's an 8-bit beer shirt. Yep. St. Arnold's down here in Houston.
Yep, and I've got a Dungeons and Dragons shirt on. So how appropriate. I mean, I wouldn't expect you to wear anything but a beer shirt, and I probably wouldn't wear anything else but a D&D shirt. So
yeah, so at least we're living up to our own stereotypes.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. And I don't have coffee today either. I'm like doing Diet Coke, so I'm gonna apologize for any burps in advance. I'll try to go on mute for those.
This thing's gonna go off the rails real quick today.
Yeah, I mean, we've already gotten a great start here talking about burps. Hey, we've got news, lots and lots of news.
We do.
Well, yeah, I think for the most part. But let's jump into. I know you threw out the poll, the Patreon poll, and I think it was the toothpick showdown. How did the results come in on that one?
Well, I told people I was going to do it. I was a little late to do it, but I told people I was going to do it, and we did it. So Crosshair got smashed. I mean, he just outright got smashed. Yeah, Cad Bane just completely obliterated him. Last time I checked, it was like 12-2 or something like that. So it wasn't even close. I think people were giving Crosshair a little love at the end just to make it not seem so bad, but they were all calling him a pretender left and right. So poor guy, but kind of what we expected it to go. But it was, anyway, we appreciate everyone participating. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, thanks for doing that. And we'll try to do another poll here. I think I like doing them kind of tied into either the episode that we're doing like for tonight, 376, the main show, or tying them somehow into the Patreon content themselves. So, all right. Beyond that, we've got some new essentials. I guess, what do they call the Legends Essentials books?
Right.
So we got the first three announced a couple months ago. They made it out last week, I believe, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago now. But what were the big ones again? I guess they just announced 3 more, didn't they?
4 more actually. Yeah,
4. That's right.
Right. Yeah, and these are all coming out September 7th, so they're just around the corner. So we've got Darth Bane, Rule of Two, and again, these have all new artwork for the covers, and they are all in the same style as what we saw with the first 3, which is utterly fantastic. So we've got Darth Bane, Rule of Two. We've got Rogue Squadron.
Mm-hmm.
You're holding up Shatterpoint there just to get an idea of the artwork. They're all by different artists. I think only one is done by the same artist, but they all have the same style to them now, which I think is just really, really nice. So I was happy just to get the books, just to be able to look at the art, and their paperbacks, which I thought was interesting. Rogue Squadron is very much the look of that book. People, I think, are going to be off the charts excited about Rogue Squadron because I think everybody loves that series, right?
Right.
But I think the cover art for it is very Alphabet Squadron-ish, very Rogue Squadron video, actually very Rogue Squadron video game. It's almost like it's lifted right out of it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of the pilot helmet. We've also got Dark Force Rising, of course, which was a nice surprise. And then the one that wasn't a surprise, of course, is The Last Command. So the second book in the original Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn. Of course, Dark Force Rising is by Tim Zahn as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also said that, hey, get ready for some more in spring of 2022. So we will have more. I presume we'll at least get the final one of the Tim Zahn series, and we'll have to see what else they throw in there. Maybe we'll get the Darth Bane sequel at that point too, and maybe another Rogue Squadron book.
Yeah.
What do you think about this lineup, though?
No, I love it. In fact, there's so many good books to pick from, and I mean, I know I give the EU some crap sometimes, or Legends some crap about they weren't all good. And to be fair, I mean, some people love every one of those books, and that's totally cool. For me, they weren't. I wouldn't say they were hit or miss. I think there was always something in them
Right.
for us to kind of pull out, or something that was interesting enough that made us talk about Star Wars, or just continue kind of keep the spirit going, the momentum going of Star Wars. So there was always something good in the books for me. But that said, I'm curious as to where they're kind of drawing the line about which books do we release, which they don't. I
Right.
think once they get into here's book one of a series, it feels like they are committed at that point to continue to release those in that series. So that bodes well for Rogue Squadron. I kind of saw that coming, obviously, for the Timothy Zahn books.
Mhm.
And beyond that, I mean, there are the Darth Bane series. Again, that one's kind of going, they're doing that whole thing. Are they going to get into the other stuff like the Jedi Academy and all of that? New Jedi Order. I don't,
Plagueis.
Plagueis would be great, right? Yeah, and yeah, and that's a good point. Some of those books that were kind of right on the cuff, right, right on between that, right before the beginning of the period before Disney was starting to come in to the point that they actually bought them out.
Right.
We had a lot of books that were in there that kind of got lost, I guess, the lost legends or the lost canon books.
Right.
Those would be interesting to see released as well. But so far, I'm pretty happy with the work, the books they've released, and the artwork. How
Yep.
about you?
Yep. Yeah, the artwork's fantastic. I think it's a great lineup. I think I still want to see some other ones come out. I really hope they go to the Republic Commando books. I would love to see those with this new artwork.
That's
I
a
think
good
it
point.
I think it would look absolutely fantastic. I don't know if my hopes are all that high because things went south with Karen Travis so badly back then. But you're right; these books that were on the cusp. That's an interesting one. Because what kind of books were those? They were like Plagueis. They were Tarkin,
Tarkin was
and
another one. Yeah.
even Ahsoka. I think was right there in that change kind of period. But
Yeah.
but Ahsoka's canon, right?
Well, it is, but you go back to that book, and they're doing things that are very different, I guess.
Tweaking
right?
a little. Yeah,
that-
tweaking a little bit, right. But yeah, those were all these things right there clustered together. And of course, Plagueis and Tarkin were well received, I think. I think there was a certain niche of people that enjoyed Tarkin. I don't know that it was for everybody. But I'm with you though. I like that we are getting a variety of Star Wars books, especially with the Rogue Squadron ones. It's not all Jedi and
Yeah.
all of that stuff, right? So I think it's a really good idea for them to bring this back and to get people excited for that series to come out here pretty soon.
Right. If you were, well, yeah, and then I guess you had in here next editions or spring of 2022. Is that right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
so you were saying these books are 2022, or you're saying
No,
the next?
So these come
set?
out the next set will be released in
Got
spring
it.
2022. Yeah. These are all on sale September 7th. So that's about 2.5 months away.
Yeah.
Something
Okay.
like that.
No, I'm glad you read the press release because I did not.
I did.
Clearly.
Just one thing I'm good at is reading the instructions.
I read the instructions, not me. I'm just ripping open the package and start building.
Right.
All right, so we've got a couple things. Let's talk about the High Republic, and then we'll come back to
Right.
your big announcement that you're leaving the show.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. He's not leaving. I wouldn't let him leave. But so this is in just a few days here. What is it? The 30th or the 30th?
Mhm.
What do we got here? I'm actually pulling up the press release now because I can't remember.
It's the 29th.
29th,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. Tuesdays. Yep.
Tuesday. So Tuesday, we've already kind of talked about this a lot. We've mentioned it. I'm holding up the Rising Storm by Kevin Scott.
Right.
That'll be out Tuesday, as well as Race to Crash Point Tower by Daniel Jose Older. And yeah, what's the best way to describe this movie here or this book?
Yeah. It's the one where he rips out your heart and makes you feel or makes you question life. That's basically what Kevin Scott did to us.
The Rising Storm.
It is a fantastic book, folks. Go get that book. This isn't hyperbole. It's not making a big deal out of it or a bigger deal than it is. It's about 450 pages, I think, but it is good from start to finish. I mean, it is just that good. We were talking before the show how we want to tackle that book because it's just so dense. There's so much in there. And while not every chapter would maybe call it important, but every chapter has something to grab onto and talk about. And it was a really good book. It was, for as long as it was actually a fairly quick read too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not an exceptionally fast reader. And man, it was just so engaging. You couldn't wait to come back and pick it up. And you just had to pass out sometimes because you're just reading until 2 or 3 in the morning. But
Yep.
I mean, you just stayed up all night and blazed through it in 24 hours or whatever it was. But
Yeah. No, and I did. And what I was telling Jonesy before we came on the air was, when I think of books like Heir to the Empire, one of the things that really kept me going in that book and some of my favorite Star Wars books and just books in general are those books where every chapter there's something that significantly happens. It may not be like sea level monstrumental or that kind of thing, but there's enough that you cannot help but go to the next chapter, and there's something that ties back to chapters before or references before. And all books, honestly, probably by formula, should do this.
Right.
I think it's in the execution where the good books really kind of stand out from the okay books or even the bad ones there. And for this one, it did feel like every chapter there was something that you could pull out. There's something worth talking about and think it makes you think. And say what you want about the High Republic. Maybe you weren't a big fan of Light of the Jedi. Maybe you weren't a big fan of the other books, the mid-grade books that were released. I think that's all fair criticism, especially since that was the first one and we were getting a whole new era.
Right.
I would say at least give yourself a chance to jump into this book, even if you read Light of the Jedi, or even if you didn't. I don't know that you could probably come in on this one. Well, I don't know. That'd be hard to say. I got to think about that a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I think it picks up some storylines. I think you have to at
Yeah.
least be familiar with what happened in Light of the Jedi. Should you have read it? Yeah, it's probably, you could probably call it required reading for it. But I think you could get up to speed talking with someone or getting the Cliff Note version if you didn't have the time to go and do it and you wanted to jump right into this one. But
Or
highly
watch our shows.
yeah, or watch out. We did a 30,000 part series on Light of the Jedi. You can go
Yeah.
watch. So, and it's probably about, you probably could have just read the book and the amount of time that we spent talking about it. But it was fantastic. It was fantastic fun though. But guys, this book is just so good.
Yeah. And there's some pretty heavy moments in there, heavy-handed moments, especially if you're a fan of the characters or just this world that they've created so far. There's some pretty significant moments that happen that you just, he rips your heart out and he seems to enjoy it. He seems to revel in it. And he's all over Twitter right now. He can't wait to smash everybody's dreams here on Tuesday. So,
Yeah, and I guess we'll quit kind of waxing over this here in a minute. But I think one of the things that really makes this book stand out is that for as many characters as he's touching, you actually get development for many of these characters. They don't feel like they're being skipped over or anything like that. The ones that need the attention get the attention. That's why I was happy to see when you get a little bit longer book like this, instead of being in the 400 or less than 400 pages, the extra time and length to this book is put to really, really good use. And not only is it telling quite a large story, but it's giving a lot of really great development to a lot of characters that I think some of them needed it. I think some of it we already had, but it just gave us a completely new dimension on them as well. And this is just brilliant work from Cavan Scott. I have a whole new level of respect for Cavan Scott after this.
mm-hmm. And just quickly, so the other book, and now we've been kind of talking about Rising Storm. Now I feel bad because I haven't been talking about this one, but this is, again, it's a really thin book. It's probably the skinniest book they've released. Well, it is definitely by far for the High Republic, but it is a quick read. It ties directly into some of the events that are happening in the Rising Storm. And it's good. I mean, it's got Ram Jamaram, he's on the front cover here, and V18, which is his droid. And they're probably the big standout. I mean, it's kind of a character book because the story in itself, it is a complete story, but it's so nestled within the Rising Storm that it's kind of hard to see this as its own standing book. I mean, it's not, you're not getting anything other than what's already mentioned in the Rising Storm, but you just kind of get to see it. So think of it as a kind of like a comic book that's, related to the main storyline. It's a quick read. I mean, it's very fast. I think I said 2 hours was about all it took me to read this book. It's that fast.
It's like one of those side quests, but
exactly.
They definitely tie into the story though in Rising Storm. And it was interesting because when we get them in Rising Storm, it does feel a little out of nowhere. And so this book makes a lot more sense to have this, having read Rising Storm already and trying to do these at the same time. I don't even know which one I would do first. Maybe I don't know. Does Rash?
No,
I haven't read this one yet. Does Race to Crash Point Tower spoil anything for?
It doesn't. What happens is, without spoiling anything, because we still can't talk about it technically, but there's a moment where they make reference to what's happening in this book, like, hey, go do this mission kind of thing. Or it's not that explicit, but something's happening and they mention these characters. The next thing you know is the end of this book happens and the results of what happens in this book play out into the main storyline of the Rising Storm. So you don't have to know what exactly happened. It's just, it's about to happen. It's referenced. oh, look, it's done here. And then they benefit from that in some way because,
Right.
of course they would. But that's kind of how it is. So you don't have to, I wouldn't read this one first. You definitely have to read The Rising Storm first.
Okay.
And when you get to this point, you could almost jump away and go read it and then come right back to The Rising Storm, or you could just finish Rising Storm and then go back and fill in the blanks with Race to Crash Point Tower. But
Gotcha.
either way, that's how I would approach it. So
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks folks for sticking with us for all of the pre-book reviews. We're this is exciting. I mean, this is wave 2, right? This is kicking off the second wave of High Republic, and my expectations are rising quickly. I mean, no pun intended, but they really are starting to escalate here because I think this is a really great book to get us started off on. And Kevin Scott's got his hands everywhere. He's in the comics now. He's doing other comics besides Star Wars, and he's a very, very busy guy, but he's having a ton of fun out on Twitter. So if you like to hang out on Twitter or whatever, just follow him for a while and you'll have a pretty awesome day.
Yeah. Okay, and then the last thing that we've got to talk about before we get into the show is you've got our first Patreon exclusive show coming out. So, we do the Patreon extra stuff for every episode, and we'll talk about what we're going to do this week for this one. But then on top of that, we were trying to give, I think it was like at the $5 tier.
Yep.
We were trying to give them something else, right? In addition to, and so what Jonesy and I committed to was doing at least 2 extra shows per month. So you'd get a total of 4, about 1 a week if you want to do it that way. And it's kind of we've kind of got a couple different things going on, ideas going around what we want to do these shows on, but they're gonna like solo gigs. And you knocked out the first one. And I'm sorry, I'll let you talk about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. And if you hear popping in the background, people, for folks outside the U.S., we're coming up on the July 4th Independence Day holiday, and people are getting a head start a whole week early.
So that was, I heard it.
Yeah, it's becoming more prominent now that the sun goes down. But yeah, so you and I talked about doing a variety of ancillary material. So the other things that are going on in Star Wars that aren't necessarily front and center. And so this time around, I went ahead and took the comic book. So a few weeks ago, we had Kira show up in the War of the Bounty Hunter series. And so I thought I'd take spoilers. Yeah. So, well, I think this has been pretty out there because a ton of websites have talked about this already. So if I did spoil it for you, I apologize, but I'll spoil it for you again if you want to join Patreon and check that out. Is that I think it's currently called the Green Milk tier. We might change the names once we come up with something more clever for some of these things to kind of modernize them a bit. But yeah, it's just talk through the alpha comic and then the first issue that was released. And it's a Boba Fett series. So it's interesting to get a little bit different dynamic, especially as we start to get really excited about Book of Boba coming out later this year and into next year. So I think this is something that's going to pique our interest. And the idea behind this book is it's right after Boba left with Han Solo from Cloud City with Han and Carbonite. And Han is actually stolen from him is kind of the basis of the story. So it's a good story so far. Has some interesting correlations and things to consider. And I hope you guys check it out. And for those who's already at the tier, hope you enjoy it. Leave us a lot of good feedback in there. I did have a mistake in there. We said we were going to do a giveaway. We learned we're not able to do that on Patreon after, of course, I did all the damn editing for it. But so apologize for that. We will find a way to do some giveaways for the kind of the broader audience here. Make sure everyone has an opportunity there, so we don't get any kind of nasty looks or any kind of trouble. But we've got some fun things. I've got some comics and stuff that were donated to us for giveaways. So that would be some fun for people to get some free comics to be able to follow along on some of this stuff.
Yep. I am going to give these 2 away, by the way.
Ooh.
Rising Storm and Race to Crash Point Tower, but we'll do that when we get to the actual show. So if you want to try to win these, you're more than welcome to when we get to that point. Because I have like 8 copies of these things coming in with all the variations and signed and all that stuff. So
I can't wait to see that one in your background.
Oh, well, I can't. I hope I get it. We'll see how that goes. Okay, let's do, we've got Patreon as well. Last thing before we go, let's talk about Patreon. We've got a new Patreon subscriber.
Yeah, Ben Paulson joined our After Dark tier, so we really appreciate it. I believe he also joined up on Discord, if I got the name right. So welcome, Ben. We appreciate you throwing a couple of coins our way and hope you enjoy the content that you're getting and welcome aboard. We're going to get the slide updated at the very end of the show and get everyone's name on there. We're a little behind there, but we'll make sure we get that updated for next week's episode.
Cool. Okay. With that, let's talk finally the Bad Batch. In this episode, the bounty loss. I don't know where I've got somewhere. Someone's been leaking these titles, and I told Jonesy the night before. I'm like, yeah, it's called Bounty Loss. I couldn't find where I had seen that or read it. Not that that's important, but when I saw Bounty Loss, I thought, well, this is going to go somewhere different very quickly. Because I was thinking, I mean, overall, well, let's just roll in right into our kind of overall thoughts. I thought she would be away more, or I guess lost a little bit more,
Right.
and this would be kind of like, kind of like Mandalorian season 2, where the finale was where they finally rescued her and we'd get this really big emotional ending kind of thing. And it didn't happen. And that's not bad. That's not a bad thing. I mean, it certainly left room for a lot of other things now to kind of get wrapped up, since we got that out of the way pretty quickly. But what did you think about that? And then just kind of overall thoughts with the show itself.
Yeah, it did get resolved a bit quickly in that regard, at the very least, which I agree with you. It didn't feel like it had enough time to build up that she was in really a whole lot of danger, and that there was really an opportunity also to learn a little bit more, although we learned a lot in this episode.
Mhm.
Content wise, it was a very good episode. And I really enjoyed the episode overall. And the fight sequence, man, we're going to talk about this. This whole episode was really, really good. The thing I did like, probably the most of what I liked, is I'm glad we picked up right from the last episode. You know, we get Crosshair chasing them. I thought that was really important to do, to not just skip to, all of a sudden trying to find things out and whatnot. And it really did pick right back up, in Crosshairs. And I mean, they got away pretty quickly, but still, I thought that was important to do, to just, keep that story really smooth and continuous, and not stray off that path too much. But I really liked the episode. Again, we could talk about the lighting and the visuals all day long. And
Yeah.
again, some really cool moments in this one that'll be fun to talk about tonight. What was your assessment of it?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, I really enjoyed the episode. I did. There was certainly the fighting, the battle scenes were cool between Fennec Shand and Cad Bane. We'll talk about that. It did kind of deepen the mystery a little bit around the Kaminoans and the Clone War, or cloning that they were doing, which I thought was
Oh, yeah.
good. Not feedback, but I kind of like and didn't like the fact that they wrapped it up that quickly, that Omega's back in their arms, or her Hunter's arms, I guess, literally. That was great. The visuals in this one were, they just seem like I don't know. I need to go back and watch like the first episodes and just kind of see whether or not they're getting better, or just they were always that good. And I wasn't
Yeah.
really, because we've talked about it. I mean, we've said from the very beginning that the art and the visual effects have been outstanding, but for whatever reason, it just seems like these keep getting better and better. There's so many moments that you could just take stills of, which I know you've been doing, and
Oh, yeah.
using them as artwork, and they're great stuff. Like, they're it's just eye candy. But the one thing, and I keep talking about the soundtrack too, is Kevin Kiner and the Kiner brothers, and what they've done with the soundtrack, which just got released, by the way. If you haven't, on Tuesday
That was a
of this
surprise.
week, yeah, they released the first 8 episode, although all the music from the first 8 episodes, so it didn't include this one. But listening to that was really, really cool. I mean, there some of the music in this episode particularly was great. The Cad Bane's theme coming back again
Mhm.
was awesome to hear. But I just want to say one quick thing, because I posted this on Twitter the other day, and when I was listening to the soundtrack, there were moments in the soundtrack where I kept thinking, my gosh, this sounds like another soundtrack that I really like and I really enjoy. And it dawned on me when I got to Omega's theme that reminded me of Omaha Beach from the Saving Private Ryan soundtrack.
Hmm.
And if you go back and listen to that soundtrack and then put them up against each other, there's a lot of common themes. And I don't know if this is intentional or not. My worry is that Saving Private Ryan is about a group of people, and their mission is a person. And this show is about, now their mission is a person. And it didn't really end so well for a lot of the people that were in, that squad that was out there trying to protect or save and protect Ryan. So,
Right.
I kind of my mind immediately started going into, okay, where is this going to go? Are the parallels so much that we're going to get either this season, and by the time this thing wraps up, very emotional moments where we lose people like Wrecker, right? Do we lose people like Hunter at the very
Right.
end? Do we
Yeah.
lose some of these other ones, or do we lose them all? And Omega is the only one, and because she is the mission, they're going to sacrifice everything they can, and sacrifice everything, because that is what their purpose now is. It's not fighting wars; it's taking care of one of their own. And so, with that, I would say go listen to both those soundtracks. They're really awesome. And tie that into the way this episode ended with what Hunter says, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. I mean, it just seems like, yeah, they're all in on her at this point, and maybe that's not necessarily a bad thing. So good stuff, though. I really did enjoy the episode. I think it had a really good emotional punch there at the very end, too, with just like the way she was looking at him and
Yeah.
you know, the moments of her crashing into his chest, right? That's what kids do. They get over the scared, and all the emotion comes out, and they just run to you, and it all comes out, and that's exactly what happened. So
All right, we're jumping in the end, man. Let's go.
I know. Sorry, man. I'm just. It was great. Okay, let's start with the beginning, because it opens up with again another surprise. I didn't know they would kind of start here, but we've got the Bad Batch trying to evade Crosshair, and he's chasing them. He's on their tail. They're trying to jump into hyperspace, but though if they do that, I think it was Tech that said, if we do that, we're going to lose the trail of the bounty hunter, Cad Bane, who took Omega. And so they were trying to postpone that until Wrecker finally, they take a pop shot like on their left wing or something, and Wrecker's like, hey, it's getting hot back here. And so finally Hunter makes the call of, go ahead, make the jump. And they do.
Yeah.
But I think one of the questions I had for you, because it's a really short segment, but you could see them as they're firing back and forth. I mean, there's returned fire. And that's whether or not you felt like Crosshair was, do you think he was pulling any punches, pulling any blaster shots? Or do you think he was really trying to take them down? Was he trying to disarm or disable them, destroy them, and vice versa? Wrecker had an opportunity to take down Crosshair. Do you think he was taking shots to kill him, or was it more of a disabling kind of thing?
No, I think they were taking shots at each other, and I think they were shooting to kill. I don't think there was any pulling of punches here. I think Crosshair looked pretty serious, and we were hoping that maybe there was something with the injury that he took. Maybe he would, something would start to shift for him, but not yet. He is still pissed off and really going after him, and it is his single life goal now to take him out. But I think Wrecker was probably still taking great shots too. I mean, they're just trying to evade, and but yeah, they were pretty close. But I mean, there was another pilot though for Crosshair, so I don't know who was actually taking the shots, but I still think that they were shooting to kill, because there's no reason. Again, there's still no reason to figure otherwise at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I would think so too. There's a part of me that thinks that maybe they were both not doing that, but I mean, if you watch that scene again, they were clearly hitting each other. So
Right.
either those were very, very strategic shots that they were taking, or they were out to kill each other. So
Yeah, I mean, they had the shields down on the Havoc Marauder. They were about to fail when Hunter had to make the call, and Hunter did not want to make the jump, right? Because he was like, no, we have to figure out who it is. But Cad Bane's long gone by now. So what good does it do to stay there with all this heat? And Tech was very right. Him and Echo were like, no, we got to get out of here.
Echo was again the voice of, he continues to be the voice of reason. There's no use in us dying and losing Omega altogether at this point. So let's just make the jump, kind of thing.
Exactly.
The next scene is kind of in Cad Bane's ship, which I don't remember. Like, that's not his ship from the Clone Wars that I recall. It was more, his ship was kind of like a fighter ship, but I could be wrong, unless that came in later on or something. I don't know, but
I don't remember at all, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm sure. So we got a lot of people in the chat tonight, so I'm sure someone can go and look that up for us. Is this Bane's original ship in a Clone Wars, or is this a new one or something different?
His original ship, and I'm trying to think of the name too, but I can visualize it, but it didn't look like this. So all right, well, either way, Omega's there. We've got Toto on the outside, and the minute that happened, I thought, okay, she's gonna get out by using Toto in some way,
right?
But I love
droid.
Yeah. But yeah, and he's kind of taunting her and talking crap about, oh, Mr. Bane's gonna let whatever, blah blah. And when she says that line of, my name is Omega, who are you? Like, she's so cavalier about it. Like, she's so like confident about it, which I thought was really interesting and great. I don't know if it's because Toto was smaller than her, or she's just been around the Bad Batch, or she's just more comfortable about who she is and what she's capable of doing. But again, I saw that as kind of character growth for her. But
yeah, I mean, she's got this individuality now too. She's not just a clone of sorts, right? She's you're right. She does have this confidence now. She does have this sense of self that she is going, like, you're going to, I'm not just a person or a bounty or a thing. I'm Omega, and she even says her name, Omega. It's so strange. Yeah. Anyway, But yeah, I like the defiance though. I think that was important. But then again, she also had these very childlike moments too. When my friends get here,
Right.
they're gonna whoop you, kind of thing, over and over. Especially later on, like, oh, now you're in trouble. My friends are here. And a little bit later in the episode, but yeah, I do like it. And of course, yeah, it was pretty. It was kind of, we basically knew what was going to happen with Toto. He was going to have to, give in to it. But I did like the little walking stick though. So now he used his foot as like a cane. I thought that was fantastic. Yeah. So it was we can add that to the list of things to dissect.
Yeah. It's part of the part 7 of the cane walking stick dissection series that we've put together. There, let's pull the Band-Aid off on this one.
Okay.
You're a metalhead, right?
Yeah.
So, no, that's a bad joke. So Cad Bane comes in, takes his hat off to bow, whatever. And there's obviously a metal plate on his head.
Right, yeah.
And so when I saw that, that had been leaked a couple days before, I think, because someone had released, I think they had found like the artwork or something, and it showed that metal plate. And so there's some speculation as to whether or not that was legit, first and foremost. And so the question here is whether or not that metal plate was not there when we got the last episode with Cad Bane in it during the Clone Wars.
Yeah, he just had the cap like everybody has on his right side. Yeah.
Yep. And when we talked about we had speculated on the Patreon episode, I think, about how could they bring Boba Fett back into this series now since Cad Bane is here, and would it be the scene that was shot or rough shot with Cad Bane and Boba Fett going at each other in a kind of a quick draw kind of thing, and Bane getting shot with his fate being unknown, and Boba Fett getting the dent in his helmet. And so now I think a lot of people, and myself included, I'm going to just say that, I think that already happened, and that's fine. But I guess the question is, in your head, is that really why that metal plate was there? I don't know how it could not be, unless there's some other story. But it's just so obvious. I mean, even the way it was framed in the camera, right? They meant to point out the fact that he had this plate on his head. Right. But then the follow-up question is that, do you think does this kind of up the ante for a Boba Fett to show up in this series, knowing that there's some really bad blood between those two, and we're already talking about Jango Fett and Kaminoans and bounty hunters and all that stuff? Do you think he's going to pop up in the series now?
Man, it seems like the likelihood has increased, huh? I mean, it seems that way. I'm trying to figure out how he fits in exactly, because again, it's not necessarily a Cad Bane story, and we've already got a bounty hunter versus bounty hunter showdown that's happened. So is it something that we need again? We have 7 episodes left, right? And we've got still quite a bit to resolve. Now they're moving these episodes really quickly though. So that's not necessarily a short amount of time. They may have plenty of time to do this, but yeah, I mean, well, if you had to put the odds of Boba showing up, where would you put him if you just had to put your money down today? Like what's the odds?
It's going to have to be a finale kind of thing. Like
a 50-50 now?
Yeah, 50-50 on the finale, and maybe not part of the main story, as a teaser of, hey, this is now he's being introduced, kind of like Mandalorian again, I guess, unfortunately, but he's introduced in some little after credit scene or something where he's found out that Bane's out there and people are after his potential sister, right? Or half sibling of some sort. All of that, and kind of giving him now a mission, and at least in this part of his life, I could see something like that, but I can't see him popping up before then. Again, they've just got too many things to wrap up, and we're down to 7 episodes left.
7, yeah. Yeah, I think I'm probably right there with you about 50-50. And again, I think it's just more of a teaser at the end type of thing. I don't see, or maybe even if we do get them and there is some sort of a showdown, it's one of those things that happens off screen again, where we don't necessarily see the conclusion. Kind of like Ahsoka and Vader, right? When that all happened. So it's we don't necessarily need to. We might not get everything that we want anyway with it. And again, we know we've got War of the Bounty Hunters out right now, which is a Boba Fett centric comic, and then we've got Book of Boba coming out later.
Right.
So again, they have all these other opportunities for things to come up, and is Bane one of these characters that they might want to use in one or both of those mediums, series, which I think is very probable and very real, because Cad Bane is a very popular character. I almost forgot how popular he really was.
So what about this though? And this is where when we were talking about Patreon, or when we were on the Patreon episode talking about Boba Fett, and I had this whole theory, which I think it could still happen. It doesn't really, but that's not important right now. But Boba Fett coming in, I think what I said was the problem with Boba Fett coming in is this show is about the Bad Batch,
Right.
And so now if you're going to introduce Boba Fett, how do you, unless he becomes part of the team like they did with Mandalorian, right? We kind of talk, how do you incorporate somebody as big as Boba Fett in the Mandalorian? Oh, well, they solved that by saying, oh, he's just part of the team. Okay, fine. Now you don't have to worry about it. He gets to share the limelight with the Mandalorian, and they kind of takes away the sting of being upstaged by him.
Right.
But with here, either you're going to do the same thing, or now you've got to figure out a way to make this still the Bad Batch, but have Boba Fett now, who's got his own maybe mission or goals in rescuing Omega, taking her, solving things with Cad Bane. It starts to get a little kind of messy for me, and maybe because I can't see it just yet.
Right.
But that would be the only thing that I would have questions, or I guess concerns about if they did do that. Not that I'm against it. It's just it is the Bad Batch, and so we kind of don't want to lose focus on them.
I completely agree with you there, and it's tough because they all are clones, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like they don't have this connectivity to one another in some way. But again, yeah, I'm with you though. It's just it gets too cluttered. I think if they do have this happen, is it one of those things that just you get the conflict and it distracts Bane so they can get away type of thing, and then the conflict happens more or less off screen, and we still don't get the resolution that we might want anyway. So I think even if we get it, we're not going to get the satisfaction of whatever actually happens as a result of that.
Right. Okay. Well, there's still plenty to talk about that. I'm sure we'll be talking about that again before this whole series or this season's over with. And so at this point, Bane goes back into the cockpit. He calls up Lama Su, and we learned that it was actually Lama Su who hired him to bring back Omega. But the question was whether or not it was dead or alive. I got the impression that it was either way, dead or alive, because he said, hey, she's alive, and now it's going to be a premium. But which I don't know, that to me feels like, okay, well, if they were going to use her DNA, I guess they could use freshly killed DNA, maybe. I don't know how that works, but that would be the only hole there. But it did sound like it was either dead or alive. But then after that whole conversation is over, we get some kind of confirmation here around whether or not Lama Su and Nala Se were actually working together, or did one of them have a different objective. And what's interesting here, and again, I'm not poking holes in this. I just want to see how they kind of, I want to talk about it because I'm curious to see how they resolve this. Mm-hmm. But on one hand, you have Lama Su hiring Bane to go after Omega, dead or alive. You've got, later on we find out that Nala Se has hired Fennec Shand to go rescue her and bring her back. The question I have, though, is he doesn't trust her, right? He says something about, your personal...
Your emotional attachment.
Personal, what was it? Personal interest is what he says.
Yeah, has jeopardized
the operation. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So I got a question about that, okay, so how and why? But then after all this is over, and he ends up sending... He tells Nala Se that she's the one to go after, or once she gets there, once Omega's brought back, right? Mm-hmm. Take her down to the bottom area, whatever, get the DNA, and then kill her. And I'm like, okay, either those are the only three people in this entire complex that, do this stuff, or it's the only other person that he trusts. But, and Tan Wei was already, she was still alive at this point.
Right.
So why would you entrust the one person that's got a personal interest and jeopardizing the operation with the responsibility of extracting the DNA and then killing her at the same time? That piece didn't really make sense to me, but I don't know. What are your thoughts, I guess, on the whole relationship here, and Bora Vio and getting back to that? We're going to get into that a little bit here, but
yeah, I think I still firmly believe Nala Se and Lama Su hired Fennec Shand initially. I think that's how Nala Se knew about her, and she just rehired her. I think they're at the end.
I like
that's kind of where I'm sitting with it, because it still makes sense narrative wise and how they interacted before, when they talked about having when they started talking about having another bounty hunter to go and chase him down, right? So I think, but yeah, this is where I didn't, the whole, terminate her after getting the DNA. I'm like, but why? I mean, you can still get more. if you really need her this badly, getting one sample, she's lived with you for 10 years or so.
Mhm.
What don't you already have? If you've already run out of whatever you're doing with it, why would you not continue to need more? And so I agree with you. I think this is a little sloppy, I think, as far as like, why do you do this? Unless they just don't want to, they just need to start getting rid of the evidence, right? And they just think, okay, we'll have it, we'll have the pure template, and we'll just ride it from here.
Right.
But again, presumably they've had 10 years of this. So I don't understand what they're still doing with it. This is one of the questions that's not really answered, and they kind of beat around it a few times throughout the episode, but we still don't really learn truly what they are doing with a pure template of Jango Fett's DNA. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute when they give us a little bit more detail. But yeah, I'm with you. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Lama Su, I think it does sound like these are probably the only three people that know the importance of Omega, or maybe they've just closed the circles down ever since this all happened. And so it's just a very tight knit group at this point.
Well, and the ramifications of him telling her to go kill her is what caused her to go reach out to Fennec Shand.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
It's like, had he could have not said anything and just said, "Oh, look, she's here," or left the bounty out, and because in her mind, all she knew is there were other bounty. She was already concerned because other bounty hunters now were out trying to bring her back, right?
Right.
But had he just said once she's here, and not even said anything, just, "Hey, now that she's here, take her down and kill her." I mean, that would have been very different. But the fact that he tipped her off, and so she was like, "Okay, well, I got to get Fennec Shand back in this because I can't let that happen to her because
you're right.
Her personal interest."
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're right. He calls her out on it beforehand, which I thought was great. I thought that was perfect. I think that was important and necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But why would you say you're emotionally attached effectively, and I'm going to make you go terminate them now rather than have someone who will actually do it?
Yeah.
Because again, that was a bit weak. Right. And I don't think we're going to get many arguments about that we're being too critical in this space, but it did give us a reason to go ahead and, for her to do, quote unquote, the right thing and to try to help Omega in some kind of way.
You know who would have done it?
Who?
Crosshair.
Yeah, that's right. He would have done an heartbeat. He was like, all right.
Good soldiers follow orders.
That's right.
All right.
I was your friend.
Enough of that. All right. So, we'll come back to Omega's long game with Toto here in just a second. So the episode kind of jumps. I mean, it's got some really quick scenes that kind of go back and forth. And so it didn't really, I want to kind of keep some of this stuff together. So we'll come back to that here in a little bit, but let's go to the Havoc Marauder out in space. We learned that Cad Bane, they found Cad Bane, or I guess, they'd got pulled up in the Republic archives, right? That, this guy has been around. He's been around since the Clone Wars. You try to capture Emperor Palpatine. And so they got all that information on there. But I guess the big reveal here was whether, was Omega's name origin. And in that there was, she is a first generation clone of Jango Fett, and there was only one other one. So her code name was Omega, codenamed Boba, or Boba was codenamed Alpha. So I guess it makes sense, right? Alpha, Omega, the first and the last. Mm-hmm. But yeah, do you think there's going to be anything more to it though? And because we still don't know what she's capable of doing, right? In the very first episode, maybe it was the second one. Who was it that said no? I think it was Cut in the second episode. He said, "Hey, the Kaminoans don't create these things without a purpose." And so we've still been continuing to speculate about what her powers are. But does the name factor into Omega at all in any way, or is it truly just a code name? And if so, here's a follow-up question to that.
Yeah,
is she gonna have a? Let me ask my question.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry.
Does she have a real name? Because and again, I'm the kind of person that's gonna get completely hooked on this thing and stop, sweat over it and stress out about it. But you've got Boba Fett, who's got a real name. His code name is Alpha. If her code name is Omega, was she given a real name? Do you think Jango Fett even knew about her? So give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, a couple things. So I guess I'll answer your question more directly first. Is no, I don't think Jango Fett knew about her at all. Mm-hmm. And no, I don't think she has a name either. Because Jango named Boba, right? And that was kind of an afterthought. I think the other thing is interesting. If you go back to Attack of the Clones, when was it Tan Wei that was briefing Obi-Wan Kenobi? Yeah, one of the things was, the only payment he wanted was an unaltered clone, and she was like, "It's very curious, that he would want that." And so now there's a bit of dissonance here with what we learned in that scene in Attack of the Clones and what we have now, right? Because now it's not true. Well, no, they maybe I don't know. Maybe Tom Wade didn't know at the time, but
Sure.
no, there's been another one the entire time, But again, it goes back to, and so we've talked a lot about powers and what's her abilities or what makes her special. Is being a pure genetic template of Jango Fett really all that special? I mean, that's only semi-rhetorical, but
Yeah.
I'm really confused by this because it just doesn't seem like that is really anything all of that special. I mean, yeah, very good bounty hunter, very good genetics, and a lot of great things, but it's not. I still don't understand what makes it so special. Maybe from a cloning operation, it's an exceptional creature, but at the same time, I just don't know what makes that so compelling because there are other fantastic specimens across the galaxy, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, I think if so for my headcanon tinfoil hat theory of the Bad Batch being created from Omega, and that's why they have their powers or their special abilities, rather than being just some kind of random thing, because they're all seem to be about the same age. So what? How did they all come out at the same time and be all special, and we don't have any other ones beyond that? It feels to me like they were using her DNA originally and created these 6 and said, well, let's stop, or maybe something went wrong or was killing her, or whatever the case was, they stopped it, and they've got these, sorry, not 6, but 5. Maybe that was the case. If that's the case, if people like the Bad Batch can only be created because of her DNA, that would make her special and unique in some way, and a reason why they need to keep her and have her around. But beyond that, yeah, you're right. I mean, she shouldn't be any different than Boba Fett. I mean, Boba Fett is a great warrior. He's a great bounty hunter. He's adept at flying, but he's not force sensitive, and we don't have any reason to believe that he's nothing more than just a very exceptional person.
Right.
So, like you said, I mean, what are the odds that they're going to create more people from that DNA and they're just going to be as good as Boba Fett every time, or as good as, better than, I guess, than the clones themselves, or even the people that the Empire are hiring? I just don't see that right now. So there's got to be something very unique and very special about Omega, and it could be her power, or again, her DNA, or something about her that stands out, that they've got to bring her back in.
Right, and it's why did they make her female too? Is there something behind that as well of why that was important? Or is it important at all? Maybe it's just to make sure we got more an inclusive type of character, but is there something behind that as well, that it was female? And I guess she probably be, the more I think about it, she's probably younger than Boba, right? Because Boba at this stage,
He's like 13. He's in his teens.
he is, and she just seems younger than that, right?
Yeah, to me, I think we talked about this. To me, just the way she acts, she's probably acting about 10 years old.
Yeah.
Maybe 11. I wouldn't put her in the teens, though. Not yet.
No, I wouldn't either. Yeah. So I think, so Boba, maybe she did come later, and maybe that's why Tom Wade didn't really have an idea. But
Right.
so, yeah, more I think about this, maybe she did come later. But no, but that doesn't make sense either, because if she's a Gen 1, or what did Tech call her? Oh man, I can't remember. Anyway, she's the pure copy, right? But does that mean that she's right off the line and predates everybody, except Boba?
Oh, in terms of all that?
Yeah.
She would have been, I mean, at this point, the Clone Wars they've been going on for, yeah. I mean, she would have been like one of the first, if she's not been, because she's not been altered. She's not been age accelerated. So she would be one of like the first generation in that same era.
Right. So, interesting. I'm just curious how much of a difference there is between Boba and her, and then how long after Boba did they create her, and then were they doing any other clones? And now I've just got all these questions. Now I'm in your land of going to Crazy Town,
Crazy Town,
trying to figure out how everything fits together now.
Yeah.
But I think it's something they need to. I hope we clear this up, because this is a little muddy right now, and I really hope they give us a better structure to this at some point.
Yeah, and I'm not going to get hung up on even though I say this, I'll talk about it, but I really, at the end of the day, like the dates and times and stuff, it's all, I mean, it's fine. It doesn't really get in the way. Right. Even if it's just close in the ballpark, I'm okay with it. For the sake of the story, that's fine. It doesn't need to be exact, So I don't know if that's so much as important as whether or not she was a first generation ish in that same era, which I think she would be just based on the timeline. That would be enough for me. But yeah, the point of all of that was, whether or not, what's the purpose of them wanting her alive, and what were they going to use her for? And all we know at this point
Right.
is that Lama Su was saying that, hey, if we've got to if we've got to, our next generation of clones has to come from the specimen. And this is back in the first episode, right?
Hmm.
We know that's really the only reason, and we just don't have any kind of details as to what that would be. And if everything goes as planned, I guess we never know, right? Because I mean, they may talk about it, we may learn what the potential plan is. I don't know that we'll ever see it, because unless they somehow capture her, and she doesn't live a very happy life afterwards at some point.
Right.
Um. Okay, so we've talked enough about Omega, and why the Kaminoans wanted her. Let's get back to the cell room, and this is where Omega, like, she does really well, and being able, she's kind of playing the long game here with Toto. She's kind of egging him on. She's taking her time, and she's got nowhere to go, right? So she's kind of slowly chipping away, at the armor by talking about, like, well, my friends were protecting me, and look what yours did to you, and that's what friends do, right? And she just keeps at it. I mean, she keeps at it the entire time, really trying to get under his get to this guy, get to Toto, the robot or whatever, the droid, so that he can she can finally take advantage of him, which I thought was really cool. It was kind of like a mind manipulation type thing. Again, she's playing the long game here, but
Right.
I
I was glad she actually still helped Toto, though, even though she sabotaged him at the end. But I was really happy that she didn't just toss him in the cell and turn it on, right?
right.
Because that would have been easy. She actually did repair him, and he was very thankful in his own little way, I think.
Yeah, and it was like, when that happened, when you knew that she was going to try to get him out of there, or she was going to use him to get out of there, I should say. There was a part of me that thought she's still going to go through with this. Like, I could not. There was no story where she would have been free and then suddenly just destroyed him or took him out or whatever. Right? You believe her. That's how good she is. That's how likable she is.
Mhm.
She's a good person, and she's going to be kept held to her word. And she kept saying, "I can fix you. I can fix you." And she certainly did. And she didn't cut any corners. She did everything. She fine tuned him. But then once that was over, she took him out in the most humane way possible. Right?
Right.
I mean, it was a very gentle disarming. Like, it wasn't her clobbering him on the head or anything like that. It was just like, I'm going to turn you off real quick. And then she even says it's just temporary, right?
Right.
You'll be fine, kind of thing. So it was very Omega-like for her to do that. So it was all very much in character, which I really enjoyed. But yeah, I never had a doubt that she wasn't going to go through with what she said that she was going to do for him, because she's just not that kind of person, right?
Right.
She's a woman of her word,
Right.
girl of her word at this point.
Yeah. I'm trying not to answer or ask the question, how'd she get off the ship without Bane knowing? Because I'm going to have to suspend reality and belief for a moment to do that.
You just press that button there, and it lets you down.
Right. Okay.
Fine.
And Bane wouldn't have known any. Okay. I'm
Hey,
not going to go
you know
there.
what? They got into Mando's weapon locker, right, on
That is 100% true.
on the Razor Crest. So
Right. The most secured thing on the ship, everybody had access to.
Yep.
Like a-
That's the thing with bounty hunters. If you can get inside their ships, then there's all kinds of avenues and opportunities open up, because it's it's kind of like a Trojan horse. They really just don't. They seem to not really care about the interior. They're that confident that they don't pay attention to that stuff. So
Right.
okay. So we get Cad Bane is kind of coming into the atmosphere of Boravio, which we're going to talk about here as well, which will be part of the Patreon episode as well. We didn't even talk about that, but we'll get to that here in a little bit here. But yeah, he comes in, he's talking about how it's the chop's real bad, which is Cloud speaking for Clouds coming
Right.
in.
For all of 5 seconds. And then he lands the ship.
Yeah. Well, hey, he can do it. He just would rather have somebody there to help him.
But he couldn't see anything in this chop.
He could.
Get your chassis up here.
I know, there was some good lines there. I like the way he said Toto.
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 Yeah.
Whatever, however he said that was really cool.
Yeah, it was.
Almost like he was singing the name. But as they're coming in, the facilities, though, were really interesting to me, because I always wondered what the Kaminoan facilities look like on Kamino.
Mhm.
And to me, it looked like that was the top. Like, those were the tops that we were seeing, and then we could finally see what the bottom was, which we, hadn't. I don't know that we've ever seen. I think there were some comic books that came out that had them, and I can't remember honestly if they were drawn that way or not. It's not important, but the cool thing is I assume that's exactly what they look like underwater. These things just are kind of floating around in a cloud city kind of an atmosphere. But yeah, and this is when they land the ship, and Bane learns that Omega's got her escaped, and he goes after her into this facility. She's kind of running off into the facility. At this point, we're back to space now. So the Bad Batch start to receive a call. She's on that little arm communicator trying to talk to them. The signal's kind of weak. We get into a lot of Star Wars science here, which is great and fun as always. But Echo tells her, hey, we need to boost the signal. So you need to find a power supplier at some point. That way they can pinpoint her location. And this is where Bane finally catches up with her. He stops her. He slaps the handcuffs on her and destroys her little comm link, right?
Right. Yeah, smashes it. Yep.
So, and then this is where Toto says now that there's an unidentified ship coming in. And I think it was Dale. Someone had a question here in the chat about that. Let me see. I'm going to scroll up just real quick here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it says, Dale said, what do you think about the unidentified ship that shows up as Fennec kills Ton Wei? Did they get the timing off, or is there someone following Fennec in? I don't know if so my quick answer on this is, if there was, I think it was just a timing mistake. I didn't catch that if that was the case. The way I've seen the episode a few times now, the way I've seen it every single time was that blaster we heard was Fennec Shan killing Ton Wei, and the unidentified ship coming in was Fennec Shan's ship, and nothing more than that. Like I don't suspect there's another bounty hunter here, but I can definitely see where if the timing's not off, it would kind of throw you for a loop and like make you speculate about whether or not there was still someone else. If it was anybody else, then hey, maybe it's Boba Fett, but that's not how I took it.
Yeah, and I think I think how you can get there is that this is a rendezvous point, so presumably no one really knows this, and the only reason why Fennec Shan knows is because Nala Se, has sent her out there to try to pick up Omega. So yeah, I very much took it the same way, that Ton Wei's probably been there for a bit waiting, and Fennec is the one that shows up a little bit late and takes her out.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Ton Wei comes in. Well, she dies, and it's at that point we get the Fennec and Fennec Shan saying, "Look, I need give me the kid, and in return, I'll give you the bounty." Which I thought was interesting because it seems like, I mean, what was Bane's plan going to be if he had turned over Omega, then took the credits? He would then have to explain why he didn't bring her back, because Fennec Shan would now have her, right? So I guess he would just have to lie to Lama Su and say, sorry, she got away. And he wouldn't know that she got the credits, I guess.
Right. I mean, yeah, he could play that one off pretty easy. When I dropped the kid off, she was with Ton Wei, or she was with the Kaminoan. So
the reason I brought her up though is I don't know that. Does that feel like Cad Bane to you? Like he seemed like he was. I mean, he's certainly a bounty hunter, and I'm not going to say he's got a lot of honor, but it seems like that would be against the bounty hunter code in some way, or he wouldn't do that. I don't know. It just.
Well, but again, he delivered the kid where she's supposed to be. The exchange was supposed to happen. The person doing the drop off pickup is already dead.
Yeah,
and he wants the credits. So I'm with you. I was curious to see if he would take the credits and hold on the kid to get more of a ransom type of thing, which I think could have been entirely possible because neither one of them seemed to be budging at all on this thing. But I did like his how he led in with Fennec Shan. So he knows who Fennec Shan is, right?
Fennec Shan.
Right, but she lacks the experience to be going up against him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a really cool line. Again, it just starts to show the kind of name that Fennec Shan apparently has already garnered herself, and just not as experienced, but as we see with this fight, she held her own. We actually had a nice little debate in Discord about who actually won this fight. So I think it'll be interesting.
I missed that.
Oh yeah, this was good. I mean, it was. Yeah, we'll have to talk about that here in a moment. But
yeah, we are, because we're going to get into the fight a little bit here and kind of talk about the highlights.
Right, but yeah, I think he would have. If he would have done the exchange, I would have thought that was still in character though, because again, he just wants the money and he did his part of the job. He doesn't care if the kid stays there and dies.
Right. All right. Well, we'll come back to the Fennec Shan, and because again, this is that fight kind of goes back and forth from this point on all the way to literally the very end of the episode. So we'll come back to that here in a little bit and kind of touch on the highlights and talk about the pros and cons, things we liked, all that stuff.
But before that, we did get Omega started. We started to get an idea of like when she was going to go try to boost the signal for the comms device. She said that they look for a panel, and she found one, and of course she says they're just like the ones on Topoka City, right? Which was the the clue in that, because we didn't know this was a former, Kaminoans. Are they?
Oh, that's true.
Were they? Was it even Kaminoan at this point? Are they?
Well, no, I've got questions about that too. Like,
yeah,
no.
yeah. The Patreon show we're going to do here in a couple of days is going to be pretty interesting. But I think but it was just interesting that we got a very different Kaminoan society, one that's older, one that's been abandoned, right? And it was just kind of one of those surprising moments. I didn't expect there to be another planet, although I think there were a lot of these things we did touch on a number of these aspects that I think we got more or less right. Of course, some of them were pretty on point. They weren't super surprising. We didn't have to work real hard to get there, but I thought it was interesting that we did get a former Kaminoan facility, though.
Yeah. Well, and then yeah. Were these called the Borovioans or something, right?
Right.
That's another can of
The
worms.
Ledoans.
Maybe.
Is it from the Ledo system?
Ledo systems. Yeah, that's true. Ledoans.
Right.
Right.
I guess, and again, they could just be a different planet, right? And maybe they spread out over time, because they do look a little bit different. It seemed like they looked a little bit different. Maybe not, though.
Yeah. It's hard to tell because it's so dark and gloomy and rainy on.
Yeah, you don't really get. Yeah, and in the vats that she finds.
Yeah, well, and let's get to that, because this is probably one of the bigger intriguing moments in this episode, where she kind of stumbles across these vats with green goo and these humanoid people humanoids in there. And on the audio descriptions, okay, so I'm not crazy, okay? Let me just kind of make that clarifying statement. I'm not crazy. When I watched this the first time at 2 a.m., I had the audio descriptions on, and I have my notes. And in the audio description, it said that the figures in there were Kaminoans. They were actual Kaminoans, right? When I went and watched it today, it no longer says that. It says that they are human. It says they're humanoid something. I didn't write that down, and I rewound it, and I was like, wait a minute. In fact, I think I texted you about it too, and I said, hey, they were Kaminoans or something but why would they change that? Like, why? I don't know. I don't understand why they would do that. And then I'm not crazy. At 2 a.m. in my notes, it says that they were Kaminoans, because the audio description says Omega, whatever, comes out the vat. She sees a former Kaminoan, still something, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I can hear it in my head. And then when you go back and watch it now, it does not say that. It just says that they're humanoids.
Right. Yeah. It was. And again, when the glass shatters around Fennec Shand, the regular body shape still appears to be Kaminoans, but the eyes seem maybe a little bit bigger.
Yes.
And the neck's not quite as long, although I think there's variations in the species, of course, because we see Lama Su doesn't have near the neck that Tanwei does, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think true. And it seemed to be a male figure just from the muscle build and things like that fell on her. And it was disgusting, actually. It looked pretty gross with how that finding. I mean, the look on her face, the way they drew her face when she was this disgusted state was really spot on. It was really good. But yeah, this was really curious though, because were they cloning Kaminoans? Is this a recent society? Is this a really old society? And then there's so many things that are still working. I mean, they're in states of decay, but there's so many things still working at the facility. It almost seems like they just abandoned it.
Right.
And so it's very interesting as to why it's still relatively intact, if not falling apart, but still intact. That it's actually functional is very curious.
Yeah, and I'm wondering too, like, did they pick this rendezvous point because the plan was to keep her there or do the experiments there? I mean, no, he said, hey, when she gets back to the facility, take her down, kill her, do the DNA. But of all the places to pick, why would they pick that place other than, hey, no one goes here, it's abandoned? I get that, but there was a part of me that wondered, I wonder if they were going to use the facilities here to do some additional experimentation. Maybe they didn't want the Empire to know, and so that was going to kind of be under all, under the veil of another previous facility.
Right. I mean, and the Kaminoans are very secretive society too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it would not surprise me that their historical aspects and their migratory patterns or whatever it might be, things that force them from place to place, are not well known throughout the galaxy and maybe not well documented outside of their own society.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they seem to be a culture of very much of scientific research as well, right? So it is very curious though that why that's the case, but or was it a war? Did something happen, with some sort of other, cloning type of thing, or did something get outed, or maybe this was when they moved them to Camino in order to, but that doesn't make sense either because Dex seemed to know a lot about these guys already, or is that just more disconnects? Yeah, but yeah, I think it was just more this was a facility that probably no one else really knew about because it's been under the radar because no one knows what a Kaminoan is anyway.
Yeah,
for the most part, and it just made a lot of sense because it's effectively a dead society, whatever this was.
yeah. And Dale brought up this too. The neck was curved, so you could really tell how long it was. People were immediately speculating it was an early Snoke clone, and I never got that impression. Like even when you see it come out, I mean, there things that are there similarities, yes, but I mean, what would be the purpose of going into the Snoke thing at this point? I just don't. I don't know
Right.
that they really want to pull that or kind of pull, thread that one. It's like it gets again really messy unless they're gonna follow through with it, which I don't think they would do. It's just not what this show seems to be about. It's about cloning, and we know that Snoke was cloned, so I definitely see where there's some,
Right.
I don't know, synergies there, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, but Snoke has
But yeah,
Snoke has 10 fingers, right? Kaminoans only have like 3, I think, 3 or 4. So I don't know if that matters.
oh, I didn't see that. Yeah, I
Pretty
didn't.
sure I remember that, but anyway, yeah, I had the same type of. I think I jokingly sent Albert a text when we were talking about what clever title or something like that, and we could just call this to Snoka City.
Snoke City. Yeah.
Yeah, instead of Taboka.
Ooh.
But
Which,
yeah,
if I think if there was if we were really like hell bent on, oh, that was Snoke, then I love the title.
yeah.
But I just don't know
Well,
that it.
if that is actually where it goes at some point, then we will go back in time and change the episode.
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
just update the title card. That's fine.
Well, yeah, that too. Gosh, you make everything so simple.
I know.
Anyway, all right, carry on.
So, well, okay. So Fennec Shan comes in, and I think we have a good moment here between them two. Like we talked about this during the episode with Fennec Shan, the first one.
Mhm.
What was that? Cornered?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe. But during that episode, we had talked about whether or not, because she seemed like she was genuinely trying to help Omega. Even though, yes, she was trying to capture her, the fact that she was parting advice and getting her food and all that, that you could say, oh, she was just trying to earn her trust. I don't know. There was something about the way she was talking to her that felt like she was being genuine and sincere. Maybe seeing her as herself or trying to uh, share some of her wisdom of, hey, you can't trust anybody but yourself, because she repeats that again here, right? She says,
Mhm.
they're you can only rely on yourself. Is very similar to the same message she was trying to give her the first time. And so I felt like there was kind of a genuine moment here that she was really, I wouldn't say trying to protect her. Either she's sympathetic to her, or she sees herself in that, or the fact that she's a small child lost in the world. Maybe that was her, kind of similar to her background. Whatever the case may be, or the fact that she's good with Nala Se, and maybe there's something there. But it did feel like she was kind of being honest about it, saying that that she took this job, and what Tan Wei was going to do was much worse, or I'm sorry, Lama Su
Yeah.
was going to do much worse than what she was doing. But and then she said, "I'm here to help," and she was right. I mean, she was there to help her. She wasn't there to do anything else but to protect her at that point.
So where do you think Nala Se was going to take her, though? I mean, this is if Fennec Shan's successful, where does she go? I mean, I think it's still separate from Nala Se specifically, and we get an idea of that at the end, very end of this episode. But still, where does she go from there? Just disappears in the galaxy somewhere,
Yeah, like
and then Fennec is her mom effectively now. I don't see that working for Fennec Shan very well. So I wasn't really sure where this would go.
I know, right?
Here.
It's like no,
Making it up as they go, kind of thing.
maybe. No, that's a good question. I don't know that I can't see Fennec Shan saying, "I'm going to take this child on and
No,
keep her." I mean, the only reason she would was because she wanted an apprentice or somebody to kind of help. She could trust her, and she was. There may be reasons there, but I never
Right.
got that impression. But yeah, you're right. Like, what happens? I don't think she wouldn't have taken her back to Camino. That's not a good place for her, especially since Nala Se is the one that hired her.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. Either she goes and hides her off somewhere that Nala Se tells her, hey, take her somewhere else to the safe house or this other deserted planet, or you got to meet up with this person and hand the child over to her. But it's either that or she's stuck with Fennec Shan, which I don't know. That would be a very interesting storyline.
Would be. I mean, of course, Omega's hanging out with Clone Force 99, so it's not like it gets any less dangerous or more dangerous by hanging out with another bounty hunter.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah. So again, I guess the point was really not whether or not she was there to help her, and I did believe her that she was sincere in saying that I'm here to help you.
Yeah.
And of course, Omega at this point it's not like I don't need your help. I've already been burned by you once.
oh,
You
the
know,
look the look she gave her was just pure
oh yeah,
venom.
like
Yeah.
F you. That's not true. That's not true at all.
Right.
So she heads over to the control panel, pops in a couple keys. I think we skipped over the part where she got to the radar and signaled the Bad Batch at this point. So that's
Yeah,
already happened, but
Yeah, they got the dish. She got the dish to work and got a signal in there. They're on the way.
right. But she uses the pod, the control panel, to somehow cause the one panel that had the crack in it to lean over, explode, whatever, it blows up, or not, it crashes on her, and that's when she gets the groove.
Dropped. Yeah, I think it actually dropped. So she got it to disconnect or just loosen its grip or whatever it was. And yeah, it fell on her, and the glass was already so cracked that it just couldn't take the stress.
Well, I laugh at that part every time because she's just like completely covered in all this like embalming liquid, or what was they actually gave it a name in the audio descriptor.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, they called it green preserving liquid. So, but the fact that she's covered in this and she's got this dead carcass body thing on her was kind of funny and pretty disgusting at the same time.
And they animated her face so well too. I did a lot of freeze frames in this one.
Did you really?
Just to see, yeah, because I was trying to look at the body as well. And then I just saw her reaction to it, and the look on her face was just classic. It was just great. They did a really good job with that. I think this is the way we're talking the lighting, though. I think we were talking about earlier. This scene is where you get a lot of that, these really green shades, but the details still come through in a lot of different ways. It was just really well done, but at the same time obscuring what you're seeing. It almost looked like Nia Numb in the first one with the vat. Yeah. I didn't know what that was.
Yeah, there's in that when she's up against the glass, her reflection.
Yeah,
you can see the particles in there. You can see the figure in there, the shadows. There's some fog or whatever that is coming through there. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff to kind of take in. So, okay, so then she escapes. She uses that as a way to escape. Heads out to the area outside the little balcony area, and she notices that there's flight pods. And so then she makes her way down there to the flight pods, jumps into one. This all really happens very quickly. She jumps into one and takes off. However, it kind of fizzles out.
Yeah, Toto ripped a panel off the side.
Did he? I didn't see that.
Yeah, he was hanging.
That's what caused it. Okay, I thought it was just because it was so old.
No, he was hanging from the side when she took off, and then he peeled the panel away. Yeah.
Ah, okay. I didn't catch that. I just thought it was just old and wasn't really reliable, but nonetheless, she gets off a little bit, or she takes off, and then finally is rescued by the Bad Batch. And we'll cut there, come back to that in a little bit, because I do want to talk, because that's going to kind of wrap up with the reunite, her being reunited with the Bad Batch, and then we'll kind of get into the aftermath. But let's talk about Cad Bane versus Fennec Shand.
This was a lot of fun.
What did you think of the fight, just kind of overall? I mean, because it was a lot of back and forth. I know there's been a lot of debate. A lot of discourse, and not necessarily nice either. I will say that, depending on the circles you run around in, or at least are privy to, there's been a lot of people that are upset about the fact that Fennec Shand was able to hold her own against Cad Bane. I know there's been a lot of debate about who won, who had the upper hand, all of that. I know you mentioned in our own Discord there were some folks talking about it, but kind of what are your overall thoughts there? And then fill me in on what everybody was talking about in Discord. I'm curious as to what our loyal listeners were saying.
Yeah, I think in our Discord it was still around like who actually won this fight, more or less, right? And it was we had some people say it was a draw. I think I landed more on this is kind of round one goes to Fennec for the most part, because she does more or less come out successful in the overall in the whole thing. And I think they both exchanged some pretty good blows though. So I think it was a good fight. I'm okay with the underdog or the young one coming in and really pushing the grizzled veteran, to his limits, right? And having to be very cautious. And we see Bane very nervous, which I think was a little bit out of character, but I think is also just one of those things of, we saw the overconfidence of Hunter in the previous episode going up against Bane. And now we see a little bit of the overconfidence of Bane going up against Fennec Shand. So clearly it seems like they've crossed paths before, maybe not in combat, but they've at least crossed paths before. But I'm okay with another bounty hunter pushing another one to their limits. I think that's okay. And I don't view this as just because it's a female character or an Asian female character or anything like that. I think it's just another character who is really skilled and is doing as well as someone who's been doing this for however long Aduros is doing bounty hunting stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I was okay with it. I thought it was a fun fight. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was a good fight. I think we got to see a lot of variety in the skills. That we got to see a lot of Cad Bane's weapons. We got to see the rocket boots, which is fantastic. So we got to see a lot of resourcefulness from both of them. And I thought that was just a lot of fun. And again, they're both crack shots, and marksmen with their weapons. And, she's pulling out all the stops too and using the environment to her advantage at times. But again, Bane was giving her just as much as he was getting. Now, she got him pretty good a few times, but I think the other thing in Discord was I think people gave the advantage to Bane when it came to more ranged effectiveness, but gave Fennec Shand more the benefit of the doubt in the hand-to-hand combat. She seemed to be a lot more adept. Cad Bane seemed to be much more of a haymaker type of fighter with his fist, whereas she's much more graceful and, of course, much more agile and quick and able to use that to her advantage.
Interesting. So in terms of, and again, this is just my opinion, as far as who won this fight, who got away, who didn't, right?
Yeah.
So from that simplified perspective, I would say Fennec Shand wins, because she not only did she get away or take off, but she disabled Cad Bane's ship and didn't allow him to take off. So from that perspective, she won. From the fighting, I actually have a different take on that. Like I thought she did a better job at hand to hand. I think it was probably evenly matched in the. I thought Cad Bane did a better job hand to hand, because there were moments in there where he was throwing her down. He eventually got the better of her in hand to hand and took her out with that kick that kind of left her down. Where I felt like, and I'm with you, I like the idea of having a grizzled veteran going up against a young hotshot. They've got something about them that makes them special, and we got to see that. And for me, the difference, the X factor, at least in this fight, was Fennec Shand's ingenuity, her ability to use the environment around her. Where Cad Bane was really relying on his gear, his own personal skills. She didn't have that. She couldn't match it. I mean, she matched it, but she wasn't going to best him in those. He had too many things at his disposal. The rocket boots, he had the flamethrowers, the double pistols. She had her bombs, the little sticky bomb things. But at the same time, I think what she was realizing is, okay, I can't beat him in any of those things, but I can get creative in terms of how I do this and play this cat and mouse game and stick these little things there and hide them and all that stuff. I think that's how she won, is just through ingenuity.
Agreed.
And that to me sets maybe that's a generational thing where, the old school bounty hunters would just go toe to toe and best person wins kind of thing, whereas she's kind of more of a tactical in and out guerrilla warfare kind of bounty hunter. You know what I mean? That's kind of how I saw the fight playing out. But in the end, I would say that, I think it was probably Fennec Shand who won, but only because she's walked away. But yeah, I thought it was great. I mean, all the moments were in there. I love the fact that we got to see the boots and him flying up. I thought it was kind of over. I was like, oh crap, how's he? Oh, that's right, he has his little rocket boots, and that's how he was able to get up. So, overall, again, I thought it was a really good, well choreographed fight, and I don't think that's the last of it either. I think it does make a good name for her. I mean, she makes a good name for herself, right? And this is what we would expect. And we don't need to see the evolution of Fennec Shand. There's nothing wrong with accepting the fact that she is a new and up and coming bounty hunter, and she's really freaking good, because guess what, guys? We saw her in The Mandalorian. So she's obviously good, and really good, because she's able to have been around that long. So for the same reasons, we just take it at face value that Cad Bane came into that first episode that we saw him in the Clone Wars as being Billy Badass. Well, this is the same reason we should with Fennec Shand. There's no difference here.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that her character is very serious too. It's not the cocky young and up and comer, right? Kind of like what we saw in Mandalorian, right? I think that's really cool that she is just very serious, and that character dynamic is consistent from this phase in her career and her life all the way to what we see in The Mandalorian many years later. And so I like that there's that continuity of the character, and she's just very serious and down to business, and she's very effective. And again, it was just a fun fight. And again, this is kind of one of those round one type of things. And these two could probably exchange blows, and one's going to win one day and one's going to win the next day, just depending on what the scenario is and the environment and what you're trying to do.
Mhm.
And I think it's, I mean, because they're also both trying not to kill the kid at the same time, right? So it was an interesting fight, and you got this extra dynamic to it. And they're both somehow still trying to track Omega at the same time. But
Right.
a lot
They lost her.
right, yeah, but a lot of fun, well choreographed. And I agree with you. Even when we got Omega right in the front of the shot, we had the scene of the hand to hand combat going in the background. It was still fully animated. It still looked really really good too. They didn't take any cut any corners on the animation either.
Wow. Okay, well, let's get to the Omega being reunited with the Bad Batch, because she immediately, we talked about this early on, her first instinct is to, she's crying. Wrecker's, she's obviously emotional, happy to see Wrecker, but the minute she realizes Hunter's there, she doesn't like say anything to him. She just buries her face in his chest or his stomach area, right? And that's what kids do. They don't. I mean they just nailed it, in my opinion.
Well, and they emulated that scene of Cut when Cut was taking care of Omega and asking her, so we get this application, this realization of Hunter, what the right way to respond is, and he asks her if she's okay, is she hurt, right? And so it was very well done. Sorry, big pop outside, very well done and very seamless in how they did it. It was just nice seeing the recognition on his face that this is the moment where you do act a little bit different and you take care of the kid because they're just a kid.
Right. Yeah, he got it, and he learned from, Cut learned from that moment last time it happened. And then Echo tells Hunter that he needs to tell her why the camp, because she asked, why is this happening to me?
Right.
And Echo says, Hunter, you need to tell her. And we don't get that moment. They cut away from that. And we obviously assume that that conversation's had. But Hunter does say that, all he does say is that, hey, she's valuable more than the Bad Batch, more than any of the other clones. And he says that she's different. And she knows that she's different. But does she? Like, do you think she really understands why? Because she doesn't come across that way. And maybe it's just her youthfulness or ignorance right now, but it didn't feel like that she was like, oh, yeah, I guess I could see where they would want to use me for something.
Right. I mean, she's definitely intelligent and is very well trained, and has, at least from a technology standpoint, she seems to just be exceptionally intelligent and be able to do a lot of things and pick things up quickly. But again, we don't really get the question answered as to why, she asks, she's different, but how? And how much does the Bad Batch really know about why this is important? Because I think even Echo says, if she's so important, if she's the vital piece to the Kaminoans cloning operations, so they still don't really know why that is so important to have a really clean copy of Jango Fett's genetic DNA. And they've still not made that totally clear for us why that is so important, or what are they trying to do with it beyond just making more clones and making another army. That, again, that doesn't seem like it's all that original or all that really secretive for their operations. Whatever their contingency plan is, that is still very much a mystery at this point, even though we might have speculatory conversations about it.
Yeah, I mean, the simplest analogy that I can come up with, and the simplest way to describe this, and I hope it's more than this, but I'm not going to be upset if it's not. But go back to the days of VHS.
I was actually watching a VHS today.
No, I'm being serious.
Of Jaws. So was I. I watched Jaws on VHS today.
Did you really? All right.
I did.
Pretty proud of you. And for those of you that are listening who don't know what VHS is, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, there used to be these tapes, these cassette tapes, right? And before digital media. And if you had a way to stack two VCRs together, or had a double deck VCR, I mean, you were kind of cool if you had a double deck VCR, but you would take one tape, put it in, and then you would take another tape that was a blank tape, and you would make a copy of it and record it, and you give it to your buddy. This happened a lot during, just to kind of tie it to Star Wars, when Star Wars Holiday Special was floating around during the 80s and even into the 90s, more in the 90s, because the 80s really didn't surface for a while there. But in the 90s, when this was kind of making the circulation at conventions and that sort of thing, you would go buy a copy, but sometimes it was a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And as you did this with VHS tapes, the quality would degrade over time. So you could tell when you've got so there was something about a quote first generation copy or really close to that original first version,
Mhm.
as opposed that was a lot of money at a convention, as opposed to the one that was only like $20 or $10, and you put it in your VCR, and the quality was so terrible. I mean, it was really really bad. And that's kind of what I think at most simplest form is if they were to go genetically create a clone or create using that DNA now for all the clones that exist, because a lot of the first generation maybe isn't around anymore, you're going to get a really bad copy, or it's not going to be as good as the rest. And so that's why Omega is so important, that she's clean DNA. She's been unaltered and hasn't been tampered with in any way. So again, probably the simplest explanation, but I would want to think there's something more there. I'd like for there to be kind of like this X factor about her that makes her special than just the Bad Batch or a first generation clone or Boba Fett, right?
But what I just have so many questions about cloning, and we won't go into it because I know you said no.
I have
But
more. I have more VHS analogies to help. No, I'm kidding. All right.
oh
Well,
man,
so okay. So whether or not she knows whether or not she knows why she's different, I don't think so. But I bet if anybody does, it's Tech, and he'll say, "Oh, he's known all along and just never told anybody."
yeah,
So
thought it was obvious.
yeah, so obvious. Hello. All right, let's get into the very final moments here. I guess the aftermath of all of this. This is where Fennec Shan calls Nala Se and tells her that the Bad Batch have Omega. Fennec says, "Hey, it's going to cost you a little bit extra. If you want me to go after them, I can." And Nala Se is like, "No, they're good as long as they're with him. They're probably safe from Lama Su at this point."
Yeah, that was interesting.
It was interesting because I don't know if the logic really holds up. Because if they've already been taken once, why would you not expect them to be taken again? Cad Bane's still out there. They have a number of bounty hunters. Even Omega says it herself a little bit later. They're going to keep coming after me. But she seems content with this, and I don't know if that was a way just to kind of end the Fennec storyline here at this point. But I guess thoughts around that, and do you think we're going to see Fennec Shannon at least in this season, or do you think this is kind of the last piece for her?
This might be the last piece for her. It would make sense if this wrapped it up because she kind of got her vengeance of sorts, if you will. But I think I think the story that we're more interested at this point though is why is Nala Se so attached to her? What is their relationship like? And is it just that now that there was a female clone, she had more of a motherly connection? Maybe she raised her and or whatnot. And I think that's the more interesting dynamic here about why that's important,
Right.
or why that's so meaningful. And she's going through all of this trouble in order to do this, because if Lama Su were to find out, I don't know they really go that well for her. I'm surprised it's gone so well so far that she's still in the inner circle and all of that, because that, quite honestly, that part doesn't make any sense, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Of why she would still be in that circle of trust on the trust tree. She'd be on the other side of the moat, like Dave Filoni likes to say.
Yep.
Trim some branches there. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't think we need to see Fennec again. I would love to see her though. I'm really enjoying the character. She's a little one-dimensional, Fennec is, I think, but only because that's the only situation we've really had her put in. We get little tidbits that there's more beneath the surface, but we've really not had any time to explore that. And again, I kind of like with Boba, this isn't really the series to do that. And so what else is there unless she needs to be brought back in to do something, or they need help from Fennec, and maybe they somehow find out that Nala Se is doing it. So maybe that's a way to pull her back in, and they kind of do a team up or whatnot. But I don't think we need to, but if she came back, I'd be all for it. I think that would be fine. I think she's a really cool character. I want to see more of her anyway.
Yeah, I think this is probably the last that we'll see of her in this season.
Yeah.
Does she come back up later? I wouldn't put it past them, and I wouldn't be opposed to it either. But it does feel like, okay, this piece is now moved on. I think this is a big wake-up call for the Bad Batch. And so to kind of counter my own question earlier about whether or not, why would, as far as Nala Se goes, I don't know that I would have been okay with the Bad Batch still having her. But I think from Hunter and the Bad Batch's perspective, this is a wake-up call. They know that at this point, they need to do something different. They can't keep doing what they're doing. This is too dangerous. They've already lost her. They don't want to run that risk again. And so
Right.
I think this is kind of a game changer for them. I think there's going to be some changes that happen as a result of this. So, but as far as kind of wrapping up this episode, she's coming back in. It's late at night. Everybody's asleep. I think Tech's they're all asleep except for them. And She
Right.
tells Hunter's awake too. God knows doing what. He's probably planning their next. He's probably thinking about all this. Like, what do we do now? Like, what has
Mhm.
to change here? But Omega says that she can't sleep because she's constantly been thinking about. I don't want to be I don't want to be cloned. I don't want to be one of those things in a tube like Bora Vio, right, or Vio.
Mhm.
And Hunter says that that's not going to happen to her, and she says, "Well, they're going to keep sending bounty hunters after me," which I think they're foreshadowing. I don't think
Yeah.
we've seen the last of Cat Bane. I don't think we've seen the last of maybe potentially other bounty hunters that Lama Su is sending now. But she says you can't fight them all, and he says, "Omega, you don't have to worry. You are never going back to Camino." And he says, "I promise that." And that kind of ends there. So I guess the questions I would have are, do they go back to Camino, or was that a declarative statement, or was that a foreshadowing that they unfortunately are going to have to go back to Camino at some point? I don't see a reason why they would have to if they can avoid it.
Right.
But
Unfortunately, that does seem to be a trend of telegraphing what will happen because we don't want it to happen, right?
yeah,
I think all but one time this has been the case. I think the explosives was the only thing that hasn't had a payoff yet from a couple of episodes ago. But I think, yeah, I mean, again, there's a certain element of it that does need to wrap up. And I think, like we were just talking about with Nala Say, I think there's something there that would be important to see. Do they have to be back in Camino in order for that to resolve itself? No, it does not need to do that. But I think it seems like they might have to go back there, especially for Crosshairs. I think Crosshair is still the kind of the wild card. Now he's out in the open, but now that he's injured, he's going to need to go back. Now, what will they do with him? And then what does that mean for his relationship with Clone Force 99 and some sort of reconciliatory, situation to occur? So I think there's still an opportunity. They have to go to Camino. They could have to go to Camino. I don't say they have to, but they could have to under certain circumstances. And again, Hunter's promise, I think he's going to learn the really difficult lesson of making promises that you really don't have a way of keeping when your back's against the wall in some situations.
hmm
Yeah.
yeah. And I know we speculated about who was it? It was Rex's advice, or I guess Rex's statement about being dead to the Empire has a lot of benefits, right?
Right.
I'm starting to wonder if that's really kind of where this is going. Is the only way they're gonna be able to really put an end to this chasing or all these bounty hunters coming at them is to somehow fake their death, make it look like they're no longer around, so they can go into hiding and not have to worry about people coming after them.
Right.
But do they need to go back to Camino? I don't think they have to. I like your point. I mean, Crosshair's still there. They've already kind of teased that they're going to bring him back, or somehow he's going to get a redemption arc, or they're going to save him in some way. We've speculated all kinds of things about removing the chip and him being kind of a catalyst and all. I mean, there's tons of stuff there that would be really cool if it happened. It's okay if it doesn't, but that would be the only reason that I would agree that would they would have to go to Camino. Do they have to though? Because no,
No.
he's out and about, and they could capture him while they're out and about, and that would put an end to that. So, yeah, I think you're right. The promise is interesting. Yeah, he's going to say he's in the true parent role. Sometimes you just say things, and even though you may not believe it, it's
Right.
important that the child believes it.
Absolutely.
And that may be all he was doing there in that moment. So, but okay, well, I think that's it. And I guess any final episode or final episode, any final thoughts on the episode itself?
No, I think, yeah, it's where do we go from here? Right. I mean, because we're back in the same spot of what's next. There's really no indication as to where we're going to the next thing. I think you said it perfectly yourself. Hunter's trying to figure it out. He's losing sleep over it because he doesn't know what the right thing to do is. And I gotta be honest, I'm kind of like an Echo's idea of going finding Rex. And at least you got somewhere to be, right? And somewhere that you can at least, I don't know, get support and have a bit of a defense around you. And now, granted, that might be calling unwanted attention to to them, but I mean, I guess at this point, do they go back to Sid? I mean, we know they reached out to Sid at least in this episode, but yeah, I don't know. Where do they go from here? I think is the question, and I don't have a really clear picture of what that is. Going back and continuing to help Sid seems like okay for the money, but quite honestly, they've kind of left Sid high and dry more than once now, it seems.
Yeah.
So that well might be drying up.
Yeah.
What do you
think?
Yeah. What do you think? What do you
I'm
think's
like
next for
sitting there
them?
thinking. I'm honestly just thinking about it now. Like I don't know. There's a couple different ways this could go. They could continue to try to do their own thing. They could at some point fake their death. I'm trying not to let the scenes that we haven't seen in the trailers happen that have not happened yet. That's what's killing me.
Yeah.
Because there's that one. I'm going to guess it's got to be the finale at this point. But there's that massive onslaught, right, where they're in the walkers and they take over one of the walkers. You know what I'm talking about? So sorry,
Yeah.
I'm spoiling for anything for anybody, but it is in the official trailers. But when I think of that, I'm like, well, how did they get there?
Right.
So yeah, but there's a couple that they could go back to Sid, they could go back to Echo. I'm sorry, Echo Rex. Maybe they go back to Cut.
Yeah.
And
Well, we don't know where Cut's at this point either, though, right?
No, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
We don't.
Right.
We could make an assumption that they do. Maybe they don't.
Possibly.
I don't know. I don't think Hunter was at the point in his life where it was like, hey, take her and don't tell me where you're going. I think it was just like, take her. Oh, where are you going? Oh, okay, that's cool. But he may or may not know. But it could go a lot of different ways. Again, it was so significant that they lost her that I think everything's kind of on the table at this point. And I don't know. He may not have a clear path immediately. We may get an episode or two where he's still trying to kind of figure it out, and it's kind of status quo for now. But he's got to make some changes. I think he realizes that.
Yep, agreed.
Okay, well, that's going to do it for this episode. For the Patreon, we're going to get into cloning. I know there's been a lot of conversation, a lot of chat. Dale's been talking about it here, and I've purposely not put anything up because it kind of ties into some of the stuff we're going to do on Patreon. But we're going to get into some of the cloning itself, some of the lore around cloning, and kind of speculate on what the Kaminoans were doing. And a lot of the same discussion that we've had about Omega, some speculation there as to what they could possibly be doing with her DNA. So the only thing is, normally we do a Patreon episode right after we're done recording this episode. We're actually going to record that on Tuesday, so the 30th, the 29th?
29th. Still the 29th. Yep.
Still the 29th. Yep. We'll record that twice in the same night. We'll record that on the 29th, so we'll release that probably that night, either on the 29th or the 30th. You'll get that Patreon. But again, in lieu of that, you've got Jonesy's Patreon episode coming out for those of you at that tier for the Star Wars comic. So
yep, that'll be out tomorrow. So yeah, big thanks to all the folks who showed up for the chat. We got Twan, Dale, Chris, Halcyon, Steph was in there. We've had some people I think drop from the early on in the chat, but yeah, that's Chris. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so appreciate everyone showing up again. There's a lot of fun, a lot of great conversation. Invite everyone to come out. Whether it looks like most folks are on YouTube tonight, but we do this on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch, and we do our best. We haven't been as interactive lately because we're trying to get through the shows quicker. Obviously, as we're nearing an hour and 40 minutes, we're doing a splendid job at this. But anyway, thanks for coming out. We really do appreciate it. It means a lot for you guys to come out here and watch us do this and interact with us and give us all sorts of great feedback while you're talking about the show.
Yep. The other thing we've got kind of in the back burner, I've got a Patreon episode coming out. It's going to be on the High Republic comics. The main title, not the Adventures. We got to do something to the Adventures comic too. I don't know, maybe we can tag team that one, or you can take that one. But we've got that coming out. I've written it all up. I just need to record it at this point. So that'll be coming out here very soon, probably next week, which will tie in nicely to the final number 6 that comes out, because that'll be the first arc finally complete. We've got that. We've got other stuff going on for the 10th anniversary that I've just need to get around to recording. I've got people in the wings for the From a Certain Point of View coming out. So a lot of stuff, a lot of show content still on the horizon. So
and the Patreon that we're releasing tomorrow is our first one using video for Patreon. So would love to hear feedback from folks about how that's working and how your feed got distributed to you in the app, and make sure it's all working right. So please reach out to us. earglumedia.com/Discord is the easiest place to find us. You can come out there and chat with us as well. Of course, the CantinaCastFanmail@gmail.com. You can always send us an email as well, or even post right there on Patreon. You can just hit reply in the comments and let us know what you think, and see if that content got to you on your mobile. Most people get it on their mobile devices still, so let us know how that worked out for you this time around.
Yep. All right. Final note. I still need to update the list of Patreon members on here and fix the audio because it's super loud. So just turn it down if you're going to listen to it. But we'll leave with the credits, and we'll see you guys next week for, what is that, episode 9? Is that right?
10? No, 10.
Episode 10, yeah. All right.
We're gonna get you all these dates and numbers right eventually. Good thing you're not a finance major.
Yeah, I'm not. We'll see you guys next week.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.